On the 22nd of October, you released a statement that Group CEO and Managing Director Christine Holgate would stand aside during the investigation into the proper use of public resources at Australia Post. On the 29th of October, the Australian Financial Review reported that Ms Holgate's lawyers said she'd not been officially informed of a 4-week suspension. The article also states that Ms Holgate was, and I quote, stood down. Can you please clarify whether Ms Holgate was suspended from the role or if her employment was terminated by Australia Post?
Thank you, Senator. The short answer is that she stood aside during the course of the 4-week investigation as it was identified at that time. That came about after a number of discussions on the afternoon of the 22nd of October, where the board, the board met that afternoon to consider the issues that had been identified. Over a number of discussions that I had with Christine Holgate, we advised her that we wished her to stand aside while this investigation took place. She was clearly reluctant to do so initially, but over a number of discussions she ultimately agreed late that afternoon that she would stand aside, and in fact we announced that we would appoint Rodney as an acting Group CEO, and advised her accordingly that afternoon.
So she's currently stood aside?
No. That was on the 22nd of October. On the 2nd of November, we, the board, received an email from Christine offering to stand aside.
To stand aside with the language is really important.
Beg your pardon.
She's currently standing aside.
Sorry, my fault.
She emails you and says...
She emailed us on the the 2nd of November and offered her resignation, effective immediately. And we met, considered her position and responded back that afternoon and accepted her resignation. And so has not been an employee of Australia Post since the afternoon of the 22nd of October. Sorry, 2nd of November. Beg your pardon.
Yes, let's get our facts straight. So when the Australian Financial Review's article on the 29th of October said that she had not received proper notification that she'd been stood down from her role when she'd stood aside, nor informed as to why she should be stood down during the investigation. Her lawyers also said in that article that she had not had any communication regarding the investigation into Australia Post from either the board or the government. How do you respond to those claims in the Australian Financial Review article?
Well, taking them one at a time. The first was that we actually followed up the verbal discussions that I was having with Christine that afternoon, and an agreement reached that she would stand aside with a letter, and I believe, and I'll confirm, I think that was sent on the 24th of October, 25th of October, beg your pardon, that confirmed the arrangements that we had struck on the 22nd. So
sorry, that was in writing or that was a conversation?
No, in writing. The 22nd was all the conversations took place during the course of board meetings and breaks in board meetings. That was confirmed on the 25th in writing to her. We made public statements on the evening of the 22nd, effectively announcing her standing aside at that time as well.
Okay. Could you provide the Senate committee with copies of those communications on notice?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
I just now want to turn to the report into the investigation into the proper use of public resources in Australia Post report. Finding 6 states that there is no indication of dishonesty, fraud, corruption or intentional misuse of Australia Post funds by any individual involved in the matters relating to the purchase and gifting of Cartier watches. Finding 8 then says, the then board did not consider or approve the purchase of the Cartier watches, and that there was contradictory evidence as to whether former Group CEO and Managing Director informed the Chair that it was her intention to purchase the Cartier watches, or whether the former Chair approved the commitment of funds for this purchase. No definitive fine can be made in this regard. That's directly quoting from the findings. So who approved the purchase of the watches?
Clearly the watches were bought and approved under the direction of Christine Holgate. Christine, in her evidence, says that she did so after discussing the matter with the Chair. That's obviously a matter in dispute. And we have no...
So you're telling us, you're telling Senate Estimates Committee that you did not approve or did not know that Holgate was going to purchase these watches?
For clarity, this was in 2018. I was not the Chair.
Oh, sorry, that
so
Chair
the Chair of the day,
time,
in evidence, said that he was not aware that she was going to buy these Cartier watches as a recognition reward.
Was he aware that she was going to buy watches or a gift?
I can only go by the report that you quoted earlier, and my understanding of his evidence was that he was not aware.
Right. Finding 9 says that and I quote again, the purchase of the Cartier watches was inconsistent with the obligation imposed by the PGPA Act on the board relating to the proper use and management of public resources, and inconsistent with public expectations in relation to the use of public resources. So what has been done at Australia Post? Has any action against the board, or how have we changed processes to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
As our CEO outlined in his response just earlier, we immediately did a review of all credit cards, their use, the policies, procedures standing behind it, and identified 32 opportunities to enhance what was there. And many of those opportunities have been enhanced and put in place. Furthermore, when the report was finally concluded, it identified further actions to be taken, and likewise they are being actioned as we speak.
That to be the last question in this bracket. Senator McKenzie.
Chair, I wrote to the committee to request that the Chair appear. I've got a series of questions
and the
going
Chair won't
to
be going
the BCG
anywhere
strategic
under standing
review
orders. Senator
report,
McKenzie. Senator McKenzie, I'm speaking.
I'd
ask you to do me the courtesy of listening. Chair will not be going anywhere until you've finished asking your questions, but it will go.
Got it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay,
final question in this series. Finding 9D in relation to the Office of the CEO credit card refers to the board as the accountable authority. Given this responsibility and other findings I've referred to within this report, why was Ms Holgate stood aside?
The Prime Minister said in question time that it was going to happen.
I'm asking the Chair.
Okay. The board...
Because the Prime Minister didn't have these conversations. The Chair
Question
had
time.
these conversations.
What else are they going to do?
Why was Christina Holgate stood aside, given the findings of this report?
The board elected to stand Christine Holgate aside on the afternoon of the 22nd of October on the basis that the shareholders had asked the departments to undertake an investigation of the matters that had come to light in that Senate estimates earlier that day. And in light of the investigation that was going to take place, it was appropriate that Christine stand aside so as to ensure the clear and impartial review and the influence that might otherwise have occurred, or the perception that the influence might have occurred if she was still in the role. So she was standing aside. It was no more, no less than that.
So the shareholder ministers called
McKenzie,
you
that was your last
and
question
made you
for this
stand
block.
her down.
Senator McKenzie.
No.
That was your last question for this block. Senator Kitching, you have the call.